My girlfriend pranked me by fake emotional cheating with her ex-blamed job stress. Now tells everyone I made her forget how to love. I didn't walk into that apartment with trust issues. I carried a futon with a busted hinge, two mismatched mugs, and the kind of optimism you bring to a fresh lease, and a girl who swore she wanted the same things I did. If you ask her now, she'll tell you I came preloaded with doubt that I had this detective energy from day one. That's not true. What's true is I was slow to show my feelings because I don't broadcast on day one. I warm up. I don't perform. I just figured the person who wanted me would wait a beat to see me, not demand a Netflix special by the second week. Back then I thought she got that. Back then I thought I did too. We split the move-in like we split the bills. She grabbed the nicer room because of her meetings and needing sunlight, and I grabbed the heavier boxes because of my back and you're stronger. She picked the couch. I built the couch. She ordered the prints for the wall. I hung them and patched the holes when she changed her mind about symmetry. First night, we ate takeout on the floor because the table arrived late. She had this way of looking at me like we were already a memory worth saving. I ate it up. The shift didn't come like a cliff. It came like a grade you don't notice until your calves burn. First, it was the size. She'd plop her laptop on the coffee table, frown at something Slack said, and when I asked what was wrong, she'd say, "Just work," like I tried to take her pulse without permission. Then the sighs turned into eye rolls. I'd tell her about the chaos at my job. Printer jam client called me by the wrong name 3 times, and she'd say, "Must be nice to have problems that cute." It wasn't playful. It cut like I'd stepped on a landmine labeled, "Your struggles are nothing." I adjusted. I took more of the chores. I got quieter around my own bad days. When she left her dishes in the sink to soak, I quietly soaked them for 19 hours. When she forgot my thing at work, this small celebration for me, finally landing a client I'd chased all spring. I told myself she'd make up for it on the weekend. When she didn't, I told myself I was being needy. That's a trick I learned as a kid. Minimize yourself so you can stay. And then she asked for grace because of her job. She worked in marketing, which isn't exactly trauma surgery, but the way she talked about it sounded like the city would fall if she didn't color grade a campaign on time. "I just need you to trust me when I say I'm tapped," she said one night, tapping her temple like she put a stethoscope to her own skull. "I forget to eat. I forget to pee. I don't have the bandwidth to manage your emotions." "Okay," I said. "So tell me what you need." "Space," she said, and moved her laptop to the bedroom. "Do you also need dinner?" I asked the door. She didn't answer. I cut up chicken, overcooked it, and ate mine standing up like I was a server in my own shitty restaurant. It's embarrassing what you accept if you want the original dream to survive. You talk yourself into believing you're the problem because that's the lever you think you can pull. She called me such a softie when I admitted I felt a little sidelined. I laughed like it was cute to be sidelined. She had a way of rebranding my pain as a personality quirk. "You're just sensitive. You're just overthinking. You're just taking everything personally." Every just was a cage. And then the prank. God, the fucking prank. It started with her phone face up on the dining table, buzzing and buzzing while she showered. I wasn't snooping. I was assembling a shoe rack she'd ordered and then abandoned because of a fire drill at work that was actually a brainstorming session with cocktails. Her phone buzzed again. The preview showed a name I recognized from a story she'd told me. Her ex. Not the nightmare ex. This was the we just drifted ex. The one who still liked her posts because he's nice. The text preview said, "Miss you too, you know." A smiley face that wasn't innocent. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't even breathe. I stared at that preview like it might vanish if I blinked. She came out of the shower wrapped in a towel, and I kept staring at the shoe rack like it was a bomb, and I needed to cut the correct wire without looking away. "Babe," she said, "where's my rope?" I nodded at the chair. She grabbed it and turned the phone so it faced down without looking at the screen. I said nothing because I was waiting to see how she'd play it. My heart hammered so loud, I thought it would shake the cheap glass in the frame that said "blessed" in fake calligraphy. We went to bed like normal. I didn't sleep. The next morning, she scrolled on her phone while she brushed her teeth. Casual. Too casual. We sat across from each other at breakfast like strangers in a diner who had agreed to pretend to be married. I forked eggs into my mouth and tried to taste something other than panic. I finally said, "Is everything okay?" She looked at mouth full of toast. What? Your phone kept going last night, I said. She chewed. Work? Is X's name at your job? She swallowed, and then smiled like I'd told a canned joke. You're adorable. I said nothing. Don't be weird, she said. It makes it not fun. What? I said exactly is it? She popped a blueberry into her mouth and rolled it around with her tongue like it was a lozenge. Fine, she said. I was going to show you tonight. She got up, went to the bedroom, came back with her phone, and put it between us like a dealer laying down a hand. She tapped the screen and showed me a thread of messages with her ex. They were suggestive. Late night. A lot of remember wins, and you made me feel likes. And right when my stomach hit the floor, she started laughing. Oh my God, she said. You should see your face. Explain. I said, because if I said, please explain, I would cry. It's a social experiment, she said, eyes bright. Like to prove a point. We always fight about trust and my work and how I'm distracted, so I told X to help me show you how it feels when someone is dramatic. He's in on it. It's a prank, like the YouTube ones. I was going to do a reveal video, but you don't like being filmed, so. That's not a prank, I said. My voice shook. I hated that it shook. That's you telling another guy you miss him and stringing me along. Stringy? She laughed again, short and sharp. We didn't even kiss chill. You were going to collect my reaction like data? For a point. To show you how dumb your narrative is, she said. That I'm distant and that I don't care about you. I care enough to create lessons. You care enough to hurt me to win an argument, I said. What the fuck is wrong with you? Her face shuddered. Don't you dare call me crazy, she said. Do not. I'm trying and you always twist it. I haven't called you crazy, I said. I called your stunt cruel. Stunt, she echoed, then shoved the phone in her pocket. You know what? You've been weird for months. You make me feel like a villain in my own home. You did villain shit, I said. You asked your ex to help you teach me a lesson. What is the lesson? That I'm not allowed to feel insecure. That you invent drama, she snapped. That you project. That you see a text and your brain writes a whole soap opera. This is why I'm exhausted. I stared at her in the kitchen light that made everything ugly. This is the worst thing anyone has done to me in a relationship, I said. And I dated someone who faked a panic attack to get out of meeting my parents. She rolled her eyes. If that's your bar, no wonder you're so. She bit the rest. Look, if you can't handle me, say that. I was quiet for a long time. We could hear the upstairs neighbors arguing about laundry quarters. The dead plant by the window looked like it was trying to bow out of the conversation. My chest felt like a door someone kicked too many times. Delete him, I finally said. Delete the thread. Block him. She snorted. I'm not 13. Please, I said. If it was truly a prank, if there wasn't a part of you that liked that attention, then blocking him is nothing. She stared at me, and I could see the calculation. She needed me to be the overreactor. It made her the teacher. Fine. She said, push some buttons, and held it up. Blocked. Happy. No, I said, but less nauseous. She walked out, and we both pretended that fixed it. It didn't fix anything. It rewired me. After that, my brain didn't trust the floor. She could say, I'm going to the store, and I'd picture a handful of different stores and different exes as stock clerks I had to vet. It was hell, and I hate that I let it turn me into the guy I swore I wasn't. I didn't snoop, but I did start asking questions that made me feel like my tongue had a badge. Where, when, who, how long? I hated it as I asked. The more I asked, the more she called me paranoid, and the more paranoid I felt. That spiral feeds itself. And her treatment got colder, not warmer. More, I'm slam. More, you know how it is. More jokes about how men are fragile. I try to have a nice night planned. Movie cheap wine, that little Thai spot with the perfect crispy garlic. And she'd cancel because her boss pinged. Then she'd stay up until 1 a.m. scrolling reels. I'd walk past the door and see her screen and want to pull my hair out. But if I said anything, I'd get what I can't unwind. You want me to be efficient even in my leisure? You want a robot? What I want, I said once, standing with a dish towel twisted in my hands, is for you to want me. She snorted like that was a line from soap commercial. Are you for real? Yeah, I said. I'm for real. She went quiet, then softer. I do want you, but I want to win at my job, and I want to not have to babysit your feelings. Stop calling them feelings like they're a dog that peed on the rug, I said. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even heated. I was tired. I could feel my body aging under "how's this a need" conversation. One night, I tried the adult thing. I suggested a couples therapist. She shot me a look like I'd invited a clown to dinner. "I don't need a referee," she said. "I need you to get a grip." "My grip is fine," I said. "It's the ground that's moving." "You're so dramatic," she said and scrolled. At that point, I started keeping a calendar just for the things that made me feel crazy. Not to build a case. To convince myself I wasn't inventing it. Friday, she forgot to tell me about a happy hour with a guy from her team, came home, smelled like peppermint and a lie. Sunday, I asked if she wanted to go for a walk. She said later, then later turned into never. Tuesday, she laughed at a reel a little too hard, then doubled down on the laugh when I looked up. This is what people don't get. It's not the one big offense. It's 1,000 micro-cuts that teach your nervous system to brace every time a door closes. We had rules, or we used to. If one of us cooked, the other did dishes. If one of us needed space, the other honored it, but also checked in. If one of us made a plan, the other respected it unless an actual emergency happened. The rules dissolved. I kept watching, checking, showing. She kept calling me sweet with that tone that makes sweet sound like weak. On my birthday, she said she'd take me to see this indie band I loved. She told me she bought tickets. Not if she said something came up at work. Rain check. I watched her get dressed anyway, the kind of dress you don't wear to a spreadsheet. I wasn't stupid. I asked who she was meeting, and she said, "Just friends." I said, "Which friends?" She said, "Don't police me." I said, "You told me you'd be with me tonight." She said, "And now I'm telling you I can't." Adults adjust. I slammed the bathroom door because I needed something to be louder than my chest. The mirror shook. The plant fell off the shelf and dumped soil into the sink. I stood in a mess and thought, "Congratulations, you became the guy who slams doors." She yelled from the hallway, "Oh my God, relax, it's not that deep." Suddenly I wanted to laugh because actually it was that deep. It was deep like a grave. 2 days later, she came home with my favorite cake. Makeup night. She chirped, and I hated how fast my stomach lunged toward forgiving. She lit candles and sang off-key and kissed my forehead. I decided to try again, because when you've invested in a fantasy, you keep it on life support long after the doctor's call time of death. Maybe the lowest moment was a Tuesday in late summer. We've been fighting about nothing the way people fight when nothing is left. I said, "Do you even like me?" And she said, "You're so needy," I could scream. I said, "That's not an answer." She said, "I like you when you're not like this." I said, "Like what?" She snapped, clingy, suspicious, emo. "You used to be chill." I said, "I used to trust you." She said, "And I used to believe you were strong." There it was. The idea that needing someone made me weak. She didn't just hint it. She said it out loud like a diagnosis. The worst part is I almost thanked her for the honesty. You get addicted to any scrap of truth in a house full of funhouse mirrors. I told my friend Jamal about the prank. I hadn't told anyone before because I was embarrassed. I didn't want to be the guy airing my relationship like laundry. But I sat in his car after we played pickup and said flat, "She fake cheated to teach me a lesson." He blinked, like pretended, texted him, told me it was a prank. He looked at me like I'd told him she pushed me down the stairs. "That's fucked," he said. "That's actually fucked." Then he got quiet and said, "You know you're not crazy, right?" I nodded, but didn't feel it. He said if a dude did that, we'd all call it what it is. I said, "What is it?" He said, "Cruelty." I felt something unclench. Naming matters. Back home, I try to break the pattern in small, concrete ways. I stopped arguing after midnight. I took walks without telling her where. I left my phone on the table face up because I wanted to feel clean about something. She rolled her eyes at the performative transparency and said, "Who's the gesture for?" I said me. She said K and grabbed her keys. She started coming home even later. I stopped asking for the story of her nights. She answered phantom questions like she needed me to push back so she could kick me. I stayed late, she'd announce. I'd say okay. She'd say, "We were ideating," like I was making a face. I'd say okay. She'd snap, "Do you want my time card?" I would have laughed if I hadn't been so tired. The last serious fight was about my sister. My sister called me crying because her boyfriend had been an ass. I sat on the stoop and talked her down, and when I came back and she said, "Oh, how cute, rescuing damsels. Does she always call you for emotional labor?" I said, it was my sister. She said, it's always your sister. I said, her boyfriend yelled at her. She said, and I had a day, and stomped to the bedroom. The next morning, she said, we need to talk about boundaries, and I laughed. Yes, I said, we really do. That weekend, I asked for time. She gave me 4 hours. After that, she texted, I have yoga. I walked. I sat on a bench by the river where the geese double as thugs. I watched one bite a kid's shoelace and thought even they're more honest than we are. I wrote a list of things I missed about our start and a list of things I couldn't stand now. The second list swallowed the first one and burped. I wished I was the kind of person who left with a dramatic flourish, who threw a mug, who stood in the doorway, and said a line that would make it into the script when my life became prestige television. Instead, I took a deep breath and went home and made spaghetti because that's what you do when you don't know what else to do. That night, I said, we're not good. She shrugged. We're in a rough patch. I said, we don't touch unless I initiate, and even then you tense like I'm a dentist. She said, I'm stressed. I said, you've been stressed for months. She said, my job is intense. I said, my heart is not a yoga block. She made a face like that was the worst metaphor she'd ever heard. For real, I said, either we both commit to fixing this like with actual effort or we stop lying. What does effort look like? She said like I'd suggested a fad diet. Therapy, I said. Less time on your phone when we're together. Tell me where you're not because I'm your dad, but because we promise transparency. No more pranks. No more weapons-grade sarcasm when I tell you I'm hurt. She folded her arms. And what about you? Me? I said, I'll stop asking questions I don't want the answers to. I'll stop reacting like every sigh is a verdict. I'll try to stop bracing. I'll give you space without turning it into a referendum on your love. She sat with that. Then she said, I can try. It was the most honest thing she'd said in a while. But, she said, holding up a finger, you need to stop making me the villain. I will if you stop acting like one, I said. She didn't laugh. I didn't either. For a week she did try. She left her phone in the other room at dinner. She asked me about my client and listened instead of pivoting. She put a hand on my back when I washed dishes and said, I appreciate you. I felt like a starving man who'd been handed a piece of bread and spent half the meal waiting for the bread to vanish. It vanished. Another Slack emergency. Another late drinks for team morale. Another Sunday morning where she slept through our plans and then accused me of weaponizing the calendar. I said, you commit to things you don't show up for. She said, I can't with this, and started to cry. It was not the kind of crying that invites comfort. It was the kind that says you're the reason for the tears, and now you're a monster if you don't fix them. I sat across from her and waited for my own eyes to sting. They didn't. I think something in me had finally burned out. I can't either, I said. You'll leave, she said. It wasn't a question. I don't want to, I said. I just don't know how to stay in a house where everything I say gets graded. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said softly, you know, I stopped feeling things right. I flinched like she'd thrown a coin and it hit me in the eye. She kept going. I think I forgot how to love. You made me forget. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so cleanly unfair that my body didn't know what else to do. That's convenient, I said. You're the victim of my vibe. She stood up so fast the chair made that sound the dog hates. I'm done, she said. I can't be the caretaker of your analysis. She grabbed a tote bag and dumped things into it like a burglar who just realized the cops were pulling up. Where are you going? I said. Kayla, she said. Don't text me. I didn't for 2 days. It felt like my skin was inside out. I talked to no one, slept badly, ate cereal at 2 a.m., stood in the hallway, and looked at our photos and wondered if there was ever a version where this goes differently. Maybe if I had been more effusive at the start. Maybe if she had been less brutal with her lessons. Maybe if we had met at a different age. Maybe if. The maybes ate half my energy and shit regret. On day 3, she came back. Not to reconcile. To collect her plants and the cast iron skillet she brought into the relationship. She didn't look at me much. When she did, she looked like she'd accidentally caught my reflection in a store window and wanted to fix her hair. She said she was staying with Kayla for a while. I said, okay. She said we should talk about the lease. I said, I'll cover the rent until we figure it out. It's easier that way. She frowned like I'd stolen her line. She left me the couch she chose and the coffee table I assembled and the ghost of every argument we never finished. She also left little things: a hair tie on the doorknob, an earring back in the junk tray, a note tucked into a book I swear she never opened that said, "Don't forget eggs," like I'd been her roommate, like I'd ever in my life forgotten eggs. Then she started telling people. Not maliciously at first, I don't think. She told the story like she tells all stories, with her at the center in a stormy nearby, holding an umbrella wrong. I heard from a mutual friend that she'd said, "I forgot how to love. He made me forget." The friend said it like it was poetry, like it belonged embroidered on a pillow. I wanted to be noble about it. I wanted to shrug and say people say things when they're hurt. But it lodged in me. That sentence rewrote me in other people's heads. It made me the guy who killed romance with questions. I texted her. We hadn't talked since Plants Day. I said, "Please stop telling people I made you forget how to love." She wrote back, "That's my truth." I stared at the quotes around truth that weren't typed but screamed. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. I typed, "I didn't start overthinking out of nowhere. You treated me like a nuisance to your ambition. You staged a fake emotional affair and called it pedagogy." I shifted words like furniture until my thumbs ached. Then I deleted everything and wrote, "I wish you well. Please don't rewrite me." She responded with a thumbs up, the digital equivalent of a shrug. If you want a metaphor for the whole relationship, it's that. I bled into a paragraph. She sent an emoji. I could end the story on some flourish about healing, but that would be fake. What actually happened is I sat in the apartment and tried to relearn the floor. I made lists again, not of infractions now, but of things that are true. I'm not crazy. I am not weak because I cared. I am allowed to want reciprocity. I think I read that somewhere, but saying it to myself felt like discovering it. I scrubbed the bathroom grout like it owed me money. I listened to sad music and then tried silence. I talked to my mom on the phone. She told me she'd liked the girl at first, but that lately she'd gotten this tone with me. "Like what?" I asked. "Like you were her in turn," she said. When I finally slept, I dreamt I was back at the table with the eggs and her phone face up. In the dream, I reached out and flipped the phone so it face down. Not to ignore, to choose not to participate. I woke up and thought, man, even my subconscious just wants a top-of-the-line pause button. Weeks passed. She texted once about a package that came to our place. I put in the lobby. She said, "Thanks." I said, "You're welcome." It felt like I was rehearsing being polite to a stranger, and I guess I was. I ran into her friend Kayla in a coffee shop. She did the pity face. She said, "You know she's going through a lot." I said, "So am I." Kayla said, "You could have loved her better," and I wanted to ask for the curriculum. Instead, I said, "Tell her I'm sorry for my part." It was true. I was sorry. Sorry I didn't leave earlier. Sorry I became a detective in my own home. Sorry I let a prank be a lesson. Sorry I kept waiting for the big movie monologue that would fix us. The only monologue left is this one you're reading. I keep hearing her line in other people's mouths. She forgot to love because of me. It's all neat and symmetrical the way pride loves. But listen, I didn't arrive dry and brittle. I got that way living in a drought. She kept insisting it was just weather, and I kept telling myself to stop being dramatic about the cracked earth. Then she found an ex with a watering can and told him to help her teach me precipitation. If you think that metaphor is too much, then good. You understand how I felt every time she told me I was too much for noticing the climate. A real post is supposed to end with a question or a moral. Am I the asshole? What would you do? Should I apologize? Here's my version. I already apologized to her, to myself, to the person I used to be who thought a clean lease meant a clean start. The moral, if there's one, is that you don't have to accept being the bad guy in a story that you lived. Because I lived it. My hands hurt from building that couch. My throat's still raw from the sentences I swallowed to keep the peace. I can tell you exactly where the floor tilted and exactly how the light hit her face when she called cruelty a joke. It wasn't a joke to me. It wasn't a memory experiment. It was real and it hurt, and I reacted like a person who didn't want to be cut again. If that makes me the villain in her retelling, fine. It doesn't make the blood imaginary. When we were living together, she treated me really badly. Rude, distant, and constantly blaming everything on job stress. She even once pranked me by pretending she was emotionally cheating on me with her ex. That messed me up and made me start overthinking and questioning her a lot. The truth is, at the beginning, I wasn't super expressive. It takes me a bit of time to open up emotionally, but I was always genuine and cared about her deeply. My overthinking came from how she treated me, not from some flaw in me. Now she's saying she forgot to love because of me, and it feels so unfair. I feel like she's rewriting the story to make me the reason for everything that went wrong. Has anyone else been blamed like this after being the one who got hurt? How do you even process that kind of emotional gaslighting? My opinion, you leave. You don't bargain with someone who treats your heart like a prop. You don't need the toxicity, the lessons, the gaslighting. I get that it's brutal to accept your partner is manipulative. Your brain will cling to the highlight reel. But it gets a hell of a lot clearer once she's out of the frame. Distance lifts the rose tint and shows you what actually happened, and that clarity is the momentum you need to move on for good. And no, you're not broken because you didn't bare your soul on day 3. It's normal, healthy even, for emotional intimacy to build over time. Anyone who shames you for needing that pace is waving a red flag. Sure, sometimes it clicks fast, but when it's instant and intense, it's often love bombing dressed up as fate. Real connection expands steadily. Manipulation explodes and then collapses. Choose steady. Choose you. Good luck, Opie. So guys, what do you think of this story?